You must give 48-hour notice. We've moved several times for my husband's career, so I haven't really had a career of my own, just a series of jobs. Some were great, some were crappy. This happened at one of the crappy places where I worked as a lowly customer service rep. I was late 40s, very dependable, and my manager had called me her ideal employee. Never had any customer complaints, never tardy, sick once in 3 years, submitted many time and money-saving ideas, always worked late when asked. I worked 32 hours a week, Monday through Thursday, so I was typically the one she asked to work late, since everyone else was full-time and no overtime was involved if I worked a few extra hours. I was having migraines and my doctor could see me the next afternoon. I asked him if I could leave 2 hours early the next day to go to the doctor. She said work was slow that week and no one else was off, so yes. But since I was giving less than 48 hours notice, it counted as unexcused and I would get a written warning. I said that I was giving 24 hours notice and we were slow and fully staffed, so I just didn't get why there would be a warning. For warnings in 6 months and you were terminated. They didn't care if you had a doctor's excuse. Tardies were a warning, calling in sick, returning late from lunch. It was not difficult to get for in 6 months, and said that it was a matter of her having to shift the schedule around. It was inconsiderate to not plan ahead and she didn't want to set a precedent and be taken advantage of. I went to the appointment, got the warning, and was ticked off about it, but I decided I would be happy to comply with their petty policy in my own malicious way. I didn't have to wait very long. A couple weeks later, Ann came to me an hour before closing and said she had a stack of orders that had come in via Amazon, and they needed to be put in that day. The phones had been busy, so the reps who normally entered orders didn't get to them. Could I stay and put them in? I said I really had no other plans, but I'd been thinking about what she'd said about giving 48 hours notice when asking someone to change their schedule. And she was right. It does lead to them taking advantage of you. So I would be willing to stay late 2 days from now, but I can no longer stay late on such short notice. But I didn't know that I'd need you until just now. I totally understand. It's like when I was having migraines and needed to get into the doctor as soon as possible. I think I deserve the same consideration that you deserve. If you give me 48 hours notice, I am happy to stay. She was speechless. She had to pay someone else overtime to stay. A couple days later, she thought she'd get back at me when she told me that I could not remain part-time and would have to start working Fridays the following week. I calmly told her that the following Thursday would be my last day then. By that afternoon, she changed her mind and I could stay on my current schedule.
Student emceed me, and I couldn't be prouder. I used to teach intro to college courses, freshman sessions where we'd go over study skills and campus resources and how not to drive yourself nuts. Fun class to teach, especially for me. I love deconstructing classroom norms. I usually started every semester in street clothes with a backpack, hiding among the students and complaining about the late professor. Once for an exam, I offered the students any resource they wanted. After all, I had made the test to be about interpreting information, rather than memorizing it. A Bloom's taxonomy don't know. If they could look up a term, they'd be able to better reason their way around it. Most brought books and notes, a few brought laptops and note cards, etc. One student, however, came to my office hours right before class. Student: Mr. Reverend Bull. Lee, what can I do for you? Student: if I don't have access to a resource, you'll help us find it, right? Like in that library literacy unit we did. Lee, not catching on yet, of course. That's what I'm here for. Student: you said we can't have any resource we wanted for the test, right? Lee, thinking nothing of it, expecting open book assurances or the like. Deb: that's what I put in the syllabus. What are you thinking? Student: great, I'd like the answer key to the test, please. Had to take a second, and then just grinned, proud as can be. It pushed them all semester to think outside the box and carve their own way, and this audacious little punk came up with a perfect plan. He got his answer key, and because I had also allowed group work, the whole class got it. Luckily, most of the test was measured more on rubrics, e.g. short answer responses as opposed to multiple choice, so they still had to come up with a way to phrase it in their own words.
Well, this is Red Lobster, and we do things the Red Lobster way. said by my manager before navigating us by the book straight into a blizzard of shit. This happened several years ago, and I am forever relieved I don't work in a restaurant anymore. Solidarity to all kitchen workers for the endless bullshit you have to deal with. At the time, I was working in the kitchen as an assembler. This can be one of the most clutch positions on the line. You take all the food being prepared by the other cooks and organize it into tickets that can be taken out into the dining room. Accordingly, it is often a bottleneck for food leaving the kitchen. If you have a slow assembler, cooked food dies under the heating lamps. Grilled salmon dries out. Fries become soggy. Linguine Alfredo hardens into concrete. Really horrific shit. It is imperative that food not sit in the window. I was working a weekday lunch shift, which is normally pretty slow. We must have provoked the wrath of the restaurant gods on this day, though, because out of nowhere the store got hit with a tsunami of customers. I could just barely make out the other cooks through the clouds of shrimp scampi, fry grease, and cheddar bay biscuits flying through the air. I knew the shit blizzard was headed my direction, and began putting empty plates up in the window with the shape of each ticket that was to leave the kitchen, a technique I had learned to help survive bullshit like this. On the other side of the window, coordinating the servers, was my manager, Cuntface. Shouldn't use his real name. Actually, let's call him Bob instead. Bob was a bit hyperactive, and had an irritating tendency to macromanage kitchen processes, a problem compounded by his not knowing how the fuck to run a kitchen. When I began putting empty plates in the window so that the incoming, interstellar-sized wave of seafood had something to land on, he stopped me. "What are you doing?" Bob asked. "I'm putting the plates and their sides in the window because we are about to have a very high volume of food coming through," I replied. "Well, this is Red Lobster, and here we do the things the Red Lobster way. We plate the food when the food is ready, and we don't put sides on early." I tried explaining that the Red Lobster way was designed by sentient suits and ties physically incapable of holding a spatula, but our sacred way, as dictated in the Good Book of Employee Training, had died in the trenches of last year's endless shrimp special. But while I appreciated the job, I wasn't prepared for an honorable death at the hands of this rush to uphold its most obscure tenets. But he wasn't having any of it. Bob insisted that I take the plates out of the window and only pass in plates and tickets that were 100% completed. Knowing full well that Bob was flying us by the book into a storm of shit, I put on a feces-resistant raincoat, rubbed some Vicks under my nose, and braced for impact. 30 minutes later, the window was chaos. Finished food was left dying in the wings of the window, while I, swiftly enough to avoid reprimand, but with a fatalistic, mechanical motion of a flood pump removing water at a fraction of the rate at which it's arriving, plated up one finished ticket at a time. Bob was equal parts confused and furious, like a toddler whose toy was suddenly taken away. "What's this food waiting on?" he cried, gesturing towards a shriveled-up steak and its associated sides. "Well, that order is waiting on some fried shrimp, and I need to wait for the ticket to be complete before I plate it up." "Why is the ticket missing fried shrimp?" "Unfortunately, I'm not manning the fryer, so I don't know." This continued for the better part of an hour. It seemed like every ticket was missing one little thing that kept it from leaving the kitchen. After the rush had passed, and I was dumping its precipitated liquid shit from my galoshes, Bob approached me with the twitchy, nervous energy of a coked-up boxer. Well, that, or a hyper-caffeinated, insecure manager who needed to assert his dominance over the underpaid crew of some bunker seafood restaurant. "Can I speak to you in the walk-in for a moment? Your name's Rue." "Sure thing." We walked to the cooler as I struggled to remember how to fight off an attacker armed with a kitchen knife from my days in Dish. "So what happened back there?" Bob asked, arms folded, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "You said we should follow the system, and we did," I replied, mentally noting that he was standing in front of the walk-in's only exit. "But there were a lot of missed items on those tickets. We had food dying in the window." "I saw it, yeah. It was pretty bad." "So why was the food missing?" "I don't know. I wasn't cooking the food, I was assembling it. I am the assembler." This line of questioning continued, with Bob trying to somehow pin the catastrophe of the last hour on my willingness to comply with his orders, while I blithely insisted that I did exactly what was asked of me. After not being able to move past this point for several minutes, Bob made some sweeping statement about doing better next time and left. Incidentally, the next time I was assembling and Bob was on the other side of the window, Nothing was said about the Red Lobster way, and the rush went smoother, albeit with some hotter plates and servers having to return for delayed items. I guess we ended up doing better, after all.
Check out my other marvelous videos.